How was I meant to know, when I made my series predictions, this would win? How? Meltybrain. Ow! That's how it won. First one to go was my prediction for the episode. Tauron. First fight, they were robbed. They got caught on a little something and then were able to drive away after the fight was ended. Second fight, I completely disagree with the decision. In all seriousness, Tauron really did rip up the competition and caused a lot of damage for other robots who went a lot further. First to fall was the kegs, or were the kegs. Tauron caused so much damage on the kegs that in a later fight they only had one that had a spinner on, so yeah, really impressive damage there from Tauron. The other one in the first heat was Iron Ore, whose flipper wasn't working, therefore couldn't be aggressive. Now they were given the win there, and I'll go into it more, because they moved about that much. Just hold that in your head. Tauron robbed of the first victory. And the judge's decision utterly baffles me. It really does. How can you mark Androne above... Obviously we didn't see the whole fight on telly, but that's going to annoy me for weeks. Anyway, second to go out was the kegs, and we all sort of knew that was going to happen. The kegs valiantly worked in both of their fights. They made sure that was clear in the episode. However, they were, in the end, knocked out by Concussion, who sort of tore them apart. Just a little bit. That was after Tauron tore them apart. A little bit more, but still a little bit. Yes, they didn't do that well, the kegs, and we sort of knew they wouldn't, but they were entertaining to watch, especially as they still worked before the fights as beer kegs. You know, the name makes more sense now. They were two separate beer kegs that work separately, so yeah. Kegs within their own right, I think, is how I'm going to describe the kegs. So yeah, that's the kegs and Tauron. Androne managed to do something spectacular for me, which was it peed all over the arena floor and then passed out. What I'm trying to say is Androne was drunk in that fight against Nuts. It was spectacular, especially to see what damage Nuts had done to Androne. I have to give them credit where credit is due. I'm not angry at them for winning that fight, I'm angry at the judges. But yes, Androne is a fantastic crusher. And it was in the perfect heat to be a crusher because a lot of the opposition had very sort of thin top armour. Tauron had thin top armour that was made of plastic. Concussion, I believe, has plastic and also some like sheet aluminium or something. Who else did they have? They had Nuts, who has a plastic top on. Obviously, they struggled against Iron Ore, which is really where they fell out of the competition completely. Quite literally fell, actually, there. I think if Androne did some work to their actual arm itself, maybe stiffen it up, maybe add a few more joints to it to make sure it stays nice and straight, I think it could be a really decent crusher, especially against polycarb top panels, because they you can't win. There's a real rock, paper, scissors format to Robot Wars, I feel. Or at least rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, which I've adapted to spinner, flipper, axe, crusher, gripper. But for me, it feels like you can put polycarb on the top of your robot and beat an axe. As soon as a crusher comes along, you've just lost that fight because the crusher's gone straight through the polycarb.
The level of challenge involved with building a fighting robot means that there is no perfect design.
Get out of my head! So yeah, it is a real tough one to decide what weapon you're going to go for, what armour you're going to put on your robot. It's something like Aftershock, who had polycarb panels protecting everything vital inside that you could see. It's a real risk, and you know, Androne would have been perfect to maybe take that robot out. Obviously not this year because they had Hardox on top, so you know. So moving through to the 10-way, we have, and I'm not quite sure how they've done it, Iron Ore 6. When I saw Iron Ore 6 at Robots Live, their flipper wasn't working. When I saw Iron Ore 6 on telly just now, that was filmed in May, that is, what, June, July, August, September, 5 months prior to Robots Live, their flipper wasn't working. So, how were they allowed in, is my question. In Series 9, Gabriel Stroud of Team Sabretooth was told if he didn't have a working weapon, he wouldn't be able to enter the fight. Has that rule since been ditched? Let's also talk about the 10 inches that won Iron Ore the first fight. I think it was just purely down to luck, if I'm honest. There was no... If Tauron had carried on moving, Iron Ore wouldn't have won that fight. So, yeah, I think it was lucky in that fight. It was lucky in the 10-way knockouts. That was the knockouts to go through to the 10-way. That fight was a pushing fight, and it wasn't the best fight at all. However, you could see it was a real struggle to get Andron moving into the pit, because Andron is such a difficult shape, I would say. It has differing ground clearances. Sometimes you'll get under it, sometimes they'll get under you. And it looked like Iron Ore and Andron had matching ground clearance at one point. So, yeah, that was a real good fight, that one. As far as driving is concerned. As far as telly's concerned, it was pretty poor. Yeah, so they're through. I can't see them winning the 10-way. Just because they're not working properly. They've not got a proper working weapon. So, shouldn't be allowed in. The other robot, and we shall talk about the final now, so I can talk about two robots at once. Concussion and how nuts. Let's talk Concussion first. Concussion struggled in the first one against Nuts, who got a superb hit in on their wheel, and I think they showed it about 30 times. Yeah, it was a really good hit on Concussion, sorry, and yeah, it was unfortunate that they got flipped. And then it was also unfortunate that Androne pierced it and then died. So they counted both Concussion and Androne out. God damn it, judges. Yeah, you're right. Okay, this is where BattleBots wins over that. Like old BattleBots, they used to have to separate the robots and then they'd carry on the fight. And I thought that's what they were going to do. And that's when they counted both of them out. So, I mean, it's lucky for Nuts, but not so much for concussion. They utterly decimated the kegs. I'm sorry, that was stupendous. They were really working that round, and they did very well to just cut them up, really shred them. Obviously, the kegs. What am I even saying? Obviously, the kegs are exactly that. They're beer kegs, and they were attached to bits of wood, so it wasn't going to work in the same way that you've got an outer shell of a robot that's all welded together. Obviously, you can't weld metal to wood. Likewise, they didn't want to destroy the fact that they were beer kegs, so they were just screwed on, and obviously that's going to be easy for Concussion to get to. However, everybody was saying, Concussion's going to get it. Concussion, yeah, Concussion's going to win this one. Then who takes it? Nuts. Nuts. Fantastic. Their flails got in the way completely of Concussion's attacks. They got round the side of the nut guards, or whatever they call them. The meltybrain is slow at this stage, but meltybrain has only ever been used so far on smaller weight divisions and for robots that don't have large flails, that the momentum carries them round, so that's going to affect the speed of the meltybrain, because obviously meltybrain is meant to just be, look at my robot, it spins, and now it's coming for you. Anyway, decent win, and incredibly lucky for Nuts. But they are now a competitive team, and I'm so glad to see it, because Nuts is the people's favourite. It is one of my favourites, and yeah, great to see Nuts go through. Now they've just realised that they've got to face Carbide at some point. So, rest in pieces, my son. It was nice knowing you. Anyway, next week we've got Thor with the mighty Jason and the mighty Thor. The mightier Thor, the not as mighty Jason. We've got Magneta. We've got Expulsion. We've got Push to Exit. We've got Hobgoblin. And we've got Coyote. It's going to be a good heat, a varied heat, not just spinners and not necessarily just one robot dominating. Looking forward to it next week. Oh yes, he's back on track. Ta-ta for now.